et te renvoie comme un sentiment, en fait, avec cette histoire. Qu'est-ce que ça te donne comme sentiment par rapport à toi-même, à qui tu es?
So is it the first time you do this workshop online with Zoom?
It's the first time I've done this type of talk online on Zoom. Yeah, I've done quite a lot in the last 3 months. I've done quite a lot of different teaching online, but yeah, this is a. It takes different skills.
Different skills. And because it's in both language, it's a bit of stress. To put people in workout group, it's very easy.
Yes.
But with the language and everything.
Yeah.
But I have the feeling it's a very good experience for people.
I hope so, and that's my main aim, is that if nothing else, everyone feels that they feel included. So
I think for people it's very smart. It's a very nice experience. Sounds good.
Et en fait,
Nodem
ce jour-là, c'est que j'ai vu, je ne pense pas que
Nodem, tu es française, speak English?
Très rouge et qui éclaire.
So you're still connecting to the audio, so you cannot speak. Je ne sais pas si tu m'entends et dans quel groupe tu es.
En fait, à ce moment même, je n'étais pas en train de réaliser que, en fait, la vie était en train de brûler. Mais j'étais juste en train de me dire, waouh, le ciel est beau, c'est génial, et tout ça. Donc, j'étais émerveillée de voir ça parce que je n'avais jamais vu ça. Et c'est seulement des heures après que j'ai réalisé en fait ce qui était en train de se passer était grave. Et voilà. Et donc j'étais sur le moment, j'avais un sentiment, tu vois, de plaisir de voir ça et d'émerveillement. Et c'est après que je me suis dit, ah là là, en fait,
1 minute.
La vie des uns,
plus 1 minute.
En fait. Donc,
ce
courant était en train de respirer, de vivre, etc. Et à ce moment-là, la vie était en train de mourir, en fait. Donc, voilà. Donc, je pense que ce moment-là, c'est un moment, je pense que je ne l'oublierai pas non plus, et qui était marqué par ça, par ces foules de gens en déplacement, par ce ciel qui est très beau et lumineux, mais en même temps par la tristesse de se dire j'ai tout perdu, en fait, et plus rien ne sera plus comme avant, en fait. Voilà. Donc, c'était un peu ça, ma petite histoire. Ouais. Ouais. Ouais.
Voilà, it's finished. So people are going to come in the next second, you know, right?
Yeah.
Within 1 minute maximum.
Yeah, they'll all come back.
Going to be here.
Excellent.
Ouais. Et c'est ça. Moi, j'avais, sur le moment, le moment court, j'avais comme une inconscience de la gravité de ce qui se passait. Ouais. Ouais. Ouais, c'est ça. Ouais. Ouais. Ouais.
On attend encore les gens qui sont dans le groupe. Ça prend fin dans une quinzaine de secondes. We still wait for the last people. In 10 seconds, everybody is going to be here. How was it? Samantha, Mike, how was it? C'était comment?
I can do both. It was great. it was really, really interesting. I think what we said in our group was that the emotional response to the stories were really interesting, because it felt like we were able to walk in the person's shoe or share a little bit of their journeys. It was really interesting. Yeah.
That's great, Samantha. And anyone else? What else did anyone else notice? You feel free to respond in, you turn your mic on, put it in the chat, respond in English or French. Yeah, it's a pleasure to hear stories. That's great. Any other, what did you notice? Yep.
It's to do.
Do you have to put your mic on?
Yeah, it's on now.
Okay.
So there's one thing I noticed is the first person that started telling the story kind of set the subject of other stories. So other people in the same group had a story, but then their stories started looking like the first story because they were of the similarity of the experience. So we were able to see ourselves in other people's stories and kind of influenced by the first story. With the first story, talk about languages and career, and all the rest of the story end up having the same subjects in their story, not the same story, but elements of the story appearing in other story.
That's a really good observation, and it's very true that when we share a story, just as I said at the beginning, stories are contagious. So, and we're finding each other on the emotional level. So, if you're talking about a story that talks about I don't know, leadership, it's going to trigger a moment where you felt or experienced leadership. So, yeah, great observation. So nice comments here. It brings out the curiosity when we start to know their stories. Stories create an instant connection, positive energy. Yeah, it's very, very true. Some of the other things, did you notice that when people were sharing stories, it wasn't just the words that you were listening or watching, it's the emotion also that you were seeing in their eyes, in their facial movements, in their body language. Just kind of raise a hand if you noticed that you were not just listening to words, you actually experienced the emotion, whether it be on the face or in the body. Yeah. Good. And so some of the one of the other things that you most may have noticed is how many of you, when you were telling your story, actually felt heard? Actually felt heard. How many of you actually felt heard? Good. Yeah, a few of you just put your hand up. Yep, good. So in general, in everyday life, in a 24-hour period, how often can you have a hand on heart say, I feel heard? It's not often. It's not often. And yet when we, if we're in a business settings, we can go into meetings and we can have amazing, amazing ideas, and we can share those ideas, and then someone else will jump in and someone else will go, and even though you've shared amazing ideas, you don't feel heard. But when we share stories, it allows people to listen on an emotional level. And again, it makes them relate. So the empathy is naturally there and being created. So I'm going to ask Guillaume to put up a second poll. I've just got another poll that I'm going to put up if you would ask. So there's a question coming up about if you feel that you feel more emotionally connected to the person that you shared with. So Guillaume, if you could put that poll up. That's it. Do you feel after hearing stories from your group, you have a deeper emotional understanding of them? So I imagine a lot of you are strangers, you don't know each other, you've never met each other, and yet you've just spent 15 minutes in the company of 2 other people. How do you feel about the people you shared stories with? wait for the results. I'm just going to read some of the other things that have been written. Yeah, it's true. When listening to someone's story, that's why I think I've got the best job in the world, really, because I'm always inspired by people's stories. And so, yeah, I agree. Listening to stories, other people's stories, is quite inspiring indeed. Yeah. It just creates. I'm just wondering, how have we got the results? So that's quite that's a lovely percentage there, isn't it? 60% yes, absolutely, and 40% yes, a bit, and 0% are not at all. And that's just by simply sharing 5 minutes. You know, one of the things that someone said very quite rightly is the shortest distance between two people is knowing their story. And one of my other quotes that I like and I live by, especially in a coaching capacity, it's impossible to not love someone when you know their story. It's quite fascinating. I remember it was about 5 or 6 years ago, a very, very good friend of mine, or two friends, run and work within a homeless charity. And on one occasion, I was invited to one of the houses with some of the residents. Now, these residents are ex-drug addicts. You know, they've lived hard, rough lives, big, burly guys. And I arrived at the house, and as I got to the house, she said to me, my friend said to me, "I'm in a meeting. I'll be 5 minutes. Don't worry. Maybe 20 minutes, 20 minutes maximum, but 5 minutes hopefully." So she said, "But you'll be okay. Make yourself a cup of tea." So I walked into this kitchen, and there were like 3 big guys, rough, tattoos, studs, you name it. And I was like, "Oh, I'm quite scared." But one of them said, "Do you want a cup of tea?" And I said, "I'd love a cup of tea, thank you." And we sat in the garden and I listened to their stories. And oh my God, every single stereotype was blown away. And it was just an amazing experience to have this connection with 3 beautiful human beings that I literally went in with this stereotypical of, "I'm scared, I'm going to be murdered," or whatever. But no, these were gentle, gorgeous human beings. So stories really do have the power to just cut through. But more importantly, how do we relate this to business? Because it's great that we know that stories can connect, but when we're talking about business, what we have to understand is that all of us humans, are meaning-making machines. We love a story. It's how we make sense of our surroundings. Like I said, with the homeless people I met, the story in my head was, these are violent, you know, drug addicts living on the street. That was the story until it was changed. So when we don't have all the facts, we create the story. So I'm just going to share my screen again with you. And I'm going to, apparently I can't share the screen.
Okay, once again.
Yeah.
Do it.
Perfect, thank you. So a lot of the time when I'm working with clients, one of the responses was, you know, I've got this great idea, but my message just isn't sticking. And one of the reasons for that is because it can get lost if it doesn't have a story. So I'm just going to show you this clip. It's 90 seconds, very short. I'd like you to just watch and decide for you what's happening. Just decide for you what's happening. So what did you see? What was happening for you? Either put it in the chat room or feel free to come on mic. Tell me what was happening for you. There's no wrong answer. Confusion. Yeah, good. There's no right or wrong answer. Tell me what was happening for you. What did you see? Yes, do.
That feels like I saw a love story of two beings trying to love each other, and one that wanted to get in the same love, and then the two were running away from that one who started to, you know, I really want to get in these stories of love, and the third person started to force and look for them everywhere. That's kind of the drama story I saw.
Brilliant. Yep, absolutely. Anyone else? Did they see anything different, perhaps? So I've got so yes, confusing. Miscommunication, big guy bullying the little one. Yeah, bullying. Bad triangle who doesn't want to host others. Yeah. Was it
J'ai vu des triangles dramatiques.
Ah, okay.
Et une crise familiale avec un enfant qui est pris entre tout ça.
Okay, so domestic violence, that is, yeah. Okay, good. So everything that all of the comments that you've been putting down is very, very close to what I usually get when I ask this question. I usually get the Romeo and Juliet love story. You know, it's two lovers and the father is trying to split them up, or just as you said, to do somewhat, you know, unrequited love. And domestic violence is also, bullying is also another one, very classic. The fact is, it's literally 3 shapes moving around a bigger shape. That's it. But because we need to make sense of it, we automatically go into creating a story that makes sense for us. What are we seeing? I don't know. I need to create a story. This is really, really important when we're talking about engaging in business. Because if you are not creating a clear story, your clients, your customers, your employees are creating their own. And that can be very dangerous. Because when they're creating their own story, it's not necessarily at all the story that you're hoping. You can spend all your time, so I say, my message isn't sticking. You can spend a lot of time getting your strategy together. But if you're not delivering it with the story, people who you're wishing to engage and influence are going to be creating their own story. It was about 6 years ago, I was doing some work in Paris for a large drinks company. And they had come over from China to deliver their pitch to get the funding for the next 5 years. And when I went to meet them, they had spent the money that they spent on putting the strategy together. They have spent over 4 months working, the ComEx team working together intensely on getting the strategy together. And when I met them, I said, okay, can someone, what's the fil rouge, as you guys say in France, in French, what's the fil rouge? What's the main point? What is the strategy that you're trying to explain? I heard 9 different strategies from 9 different people. And at the end, the marketing director, who's a guy called Mark, just was shocked. And he said, what's going on? Where have we gone wrong? We've spent 3 months working together on this. Why are we not delivering the same information? And it caused it was a bit of a panic because they only had about 24 hours to get this pitch perfect. And then Mark, the managing director, he said, look, for me, it's very clear. You know, I moved from my job in Egypt to take over in China because I wanted to bring that family feeling. And he went on to explain what it meant to him to be a family in the workplace. And from that moment on, every other person in the team went, but that's what I want. And that's what I said. And it just all came together. Literally, because he shared a story of how what his vision of family meant within a company. So being clear on your stories, if you're delivering with a story, is going to help create much more of a clarity. However, as I said at the very beginning, stories are really, really, really powerful, but it does make a difference when we're talking about stories in business, when we have a point. What is the point to your story? It's lovely sharing stories. You've just experienced it in the breakout rooms. It's lovely to share stories. It's lovely to hear other people be inspired. How can you use that story within business? So I'm going to ask you I'm going to put you back in the breakout rooms, and you're just going to have 5 minutes to decide on one of the stories. Only choose one of the stories and work as a group to decide what could possibly be the business point of that story. So for example, the story I shared about my son, Freddie, which is a personal story, but it absolutely could be used as a business story, because it demonstrates that we can put models in place. We can do things how we've always done, but we are not necessarily going to get the best out of people, their full potential. There is so much innovative behavior that we're missing when we put everyone in the box. The same as my son, he was in mainstream schooling, didn't fit the box. You know, he was draining the system, if you like. But now we've found a more creative, innovative way of teaching him, of connecting with how he learns. He's potentially going to be quite a good person for the society in the future. Who knows? Hopefully, fingers crossed. So there's every single story, whether it's personal or professional, there is always a business point. So I'm going to ask you Guillaume's going to put you back, hopefully in the same rooms again. You're going to have 5 minutes, just 5 minutes, to choose one of the stories that you heard and decide what's the business point. Is it a story about innovation? Is it a story about leadership? Is it a story about trust? Is it a story about courage or bravery? What is the business point, and in what setting could you possibly use that story if you wanted to engage other people in a meeting for that particular reason? Okay. Hopefully that's clear. If it's not, just raise your hand up or put something in the chat room. If not, Guillaume, I will ask you to quickly put them in the chat room for 5 minutes. I realize that we're running briefly out of time, so I'm just going to ask Guillaume if there's time.
Ready.
Yeah.
C'est bon pour tout le monde. Je lance dans les mêmes groupes pour 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
Okay. So it means we will go a little bit over time. So 5 minutes and then 5 minutes feedback. So that will be 4:10 in my side of the world. 10 past the hour, I should say.
Ok, à tout à l'heure. Alors, non, les gens sont en train d'aller dans le sous-groupe. Alors, pour les personnes qui sont encore ici, je ne sais pas pourquoi vous ne rejoignez pas Ah, mais vous êtes non affecté en fait. Qu'est-ce qui s'est passé?
Ils sont venus après.
Ok,
Certainement.
on va vous mettre ensemble.
En même temps, sinon on va tout confier.
Je peux aller voir. Alors, je vous ai affecté à des groupes. Vous devez avoir vu une fenêtre apparaître. Il faut cliquer pour valider. Voilà, il faut cliquer, vous allez rejoindre votre groupe. Fermez Zoom, enfin fermez. Déplacez la fenêtre de Zoom, il y a peut-être une fenêtre derrière. En tout cas, il y a un groupe qui vous attend. Vous avez tous été affectés à un groupe.
Et Wald, est-ce que tu vois la fenêtre pour rejoindre le groupe?
Et Ward et Fidèle. Non.
Non. Okay. How are things going for you, Anna?
Good, good. Yeah. It's quite an amazing feat that you're doing a whole conference online. It's pretty impressive.
End of second day, but I'm feeling dead.
I can imagine. I can absolutely imagine.
Yeah.
Tomorrow is it 4 days or 3 days?
5.
5 days, 25 sessions.
Amazing.
But it's Arminda. Arminda?
Mais c'est la fin de l'heure.
Ah oui, mais c'est l'affaire de l'heure.
Il reste 1 minute.
Ouais, il va rester 1 minute. Arminda, est-ce que tu veux rejoindre ton groupe? Si tu... ouais.
Do you speak French or English, Amida? You are on mute.
English.
English. So you want to join?
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
So people are in breakout groups
And
for just 1 minute. So does it make sense if we send you there?
Okay.
You can stay with us. You're welcome. Have you seen the beginning of the presentation of the conference, or you just arrived?
No, I participated yesterday in the one about governance of Antioch. Yes.
But for this one, for the one of on the storytelling, you just arrived.
Yes, I just arrived.
Okay. Is on YouTube, but you don't have the beginning of the conference on YouTube, I think.
Why?
Because it's my fault. I missed something.
Okay. Yeah, so it's a big week for us.
It's a huge week.
But it's a good feeling because have you seen people are they were yesterday, they come today, and you have a bit the flavor of a real conference. During a long time, you spend time with people, you recognize people, and people make connection between conferences.
Yeah.
It's a big, an energy. It's a big energy.
Absolutely, absolutely. And a brilliant way of just bringing people together all over the place, all over the world.
Yeah, lots of fun. It's a very good opportunity to have some speaker you cannot have easily in Africa.
Absolutely.
25 seconds.
Okay.
So we go till a quarter past 5. I don't know where you are.
So just
So
10
we,
minutes.
yes, 10 minutes and we,
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
Va dire Stéphanie.
Encore. Je mute.
Allô, allô, vous m'entendez?
Yep.
Nous avons un problème.
Oh, no.
Okay, everybody has to mute for the moment. And if you have a problem in the chat, and now Anna is going to speak.
So I'm just, hopefully you managed to find a business point for your story. But with, it was very short time, I realized that it's, we're running out of time. I was trying to rush you. But hopefully you've had an experience of understanding how you can take any story, professional or personal, and move it into a potential business story to influence people. We've looked at how we can connect with people on a much deeper emotional level within 5 minutes. You know, you didn't need to spend a long time with people. So if you're someone who is doing a lot of networking, storytelling is a great way of making that connection very, very quickly. And using the business point, trying to find the business point, I realize it's too short, but hopefully you've now got an idea and you can go away and practice. Use stories, try them out. And it's like anything that, you know, when you first learn to ride a bike, it feels weird, it feels awkward, you fall off, get back on, you fall off. It's the same when you start using stories purposefully with a point. At the beginning, it's going to feel clumsy, it's going to feel non-authentic, but I promise you, the more you practice, the more you finding that business point, the more natural it becomes. Now you get on a bike, you ride, you don't even think about it. Mm-hmm. So one of the key things I would say is collecting stories. And you can collect stories everywhere. For example, I collect stories from my children. I collect stories from my professional experiences. Stories are everywhere. So one of the things I do suggest is if you've got a mobile phone, you can have an application, either something like Evernote, or there are lots of different ways of putting it. And just jot down some of the key information so that when you're called upon to give a presentation on innovation or saving money, you can just go up, go to your story bank, go to your phone and go, where is that story? But the key to keeping great story is never write the story out in full, because what we're talking about is oral stories. So you just want the key dates, the key names, and the key points of what the story is. Because stories are so stuck in our head, you will remember the story. So you do not need to write it out full. Also, when we write it out full, it takes away a little bit of the magic and a little bit of the natural, authentic way of delivery. So hopefully I've given you tiny taster of how powerful stories can be and how we can, just one of the ways that we can use stories within business. If anyone has any questions or feedback that they would like to share, please feel free.
There's one question, Hanna. It's about, is storytelling only narrative oral? Or is there also storytelling with, for instance, photos, pictures?
So there are storytelling in pictures, there are storytelling in writing, there are storytelling in oral. What my work is about is the power of storytelling in an oral way. So how do we use that in meetings? But I also use that when it comes to PowerPoints. Now, one of the worst things that kills businesses is PowerPoints. And, you know, the reason they're called bullet points is because, you know, they shoot you dead. It's boring. But when you're using a PowerPoint, if you're using an image, that image should help enhance the story. it creates an extra mental image of you. So when you're using PowerPoints, less is more. The more powerful picture you can use in a PowerPoint is very, very important. But yeah, obviously in marketing, there are different, you know, you see TV adverts, it's storytelling in a more visual way, but essentially it's all the same. Yeah.
And there is a question, do you have any tips? And I can connect it to, if we want to know more about storytelling, is there a website that we can go to understand better, that we can reread a bit what you've been saying?
Absolutely. So one of the best websites of so much resources and lots of stories, there is a free podcast that comes out every week. It's called anecdote.com. So www.anecdote.com. It's run by two amazing guys that I work with called Mark Stenck and Sean Callahan. Sean has actually written a book called Putting Stories to Work. It's available on Amazon and other good bookshops. That is if you're interested in understanding more about storytelling, that is for me is absolutely what I would say the first port of call as well, that to find out more, definitely.
So can you have a look at the chat if I've done it right? Anecdote.com, or maybe I made a mistake.
Yeah, it's only one N.
Okay, sorry. I will do it again.
Yep.
Voila, it's there. And then the book, Putting Stories to Work.
Yeah, exactly. So just picking up on one of the things that says, you know, data storytelling is essential. Data is boring. It's very hard to get emotionally connected to data. But data is so important. I mean, we do need to know the figures. We do need to know this. And that, you know, at the very beginning, the first slide I said, stories is fact, is data, delivered with content, wrapped with emotion. So if we can find the stories that are backing the data, you are going to get people to remember. You know, many times I've been to presentations, they've been the most amazing slides of graphs and percentages, and at the end I'll say to someone, do you remember the percentage of X, Y? Nope, none whatsoever, because, you know, data enters, but it also deletes very, very quickly. But without that power of the story behind where that data is coming from, that can make all the difference. So yeah, if any of you, if data is a very important part of business, and you're losing your audience by not adding the story with it.
Okay, thank you very much, Hanna. I don't see any other questions in the chat. Am I right? If not, just raise your hand. If there are no further questions. I don't think so.
No.
Thank you, Hanna, for this very interesting and very story-like presentation. It was a pleasure to listen to you.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure also to be in the breakout groups and to hear other people's stories. Thank you also for being able to spend 15 minutes longer. And thank you, everybody, for being there. And then this is the end of today, but tomorrow morning we start again. I don't have the, let me see, something about donateur. Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock UK time, so 10 o'clock France, 9 o'clock Congo Basin, and 8 o'clock West Africa. See you all tomorrow. Have a very relaxing evening. Bye.
Merci pour la traduction.
Thank you, bye.
And thank you for translation,
Isabelle.
Thank you.
Thank you all of you. See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
À demain. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Bye-bye.
Au revoir.
Au revoir à tous.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Merci la
Au
journée.
revoir.
C'était super les différentes positions.
Merci. Merci pour ces feedbacks.
Félicité, il faut que tu m'envoies un message.
Isabelle,
Félicité.
je ne vais pas partir.
Allô?
Ouais, c'est terminé.
Mais Mireille, j'ai pas suivi.
Tu m'envoies un email, félicité.
Ah, d'accord, ça marche. Bye bye.
Bye tout le monde.
Bye bye.
Bye, Salim.
Bye.
Ouais.
À demain. À demain.
À demain.
Bye.
J'ai l'impression que ça met du temps avant que les gens partent, mais ça met du temps avant.
Hi, excuse me.
Yes,
Can I
please.
have just one question before I leave? I arrived late, so I do apologize for this. But it was very, very interesting and powerful, the 30 minutes that I got to spend with you. I'd be grateful if I can have any way to contact you, Hannah. Are you on LinkedIn, or if I can have your email?
Yeah, LinkedIn. So my name is Hanna Davis. I'm on LinkedIn, absolutely.
Yeah. Is it the lifeguard at the? That's what I found. No, that's not you.
No. If not, my email address is Hanna.
Yeah.
Dot. In fact, I'll put it in the.
Yes.
Yeah,
Rim,
yes, chat.
You can go on the website of Enough for Change. There is a presentation and the link on Hanna Davis. You can connect on Facebook group or
yes. I'm in the Facebook
question.
group.
We're going to share as many information as we can.
Brilliant.
And you can contact us if really you don't find the information.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you and have a nice evening. Bye.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Alors, hop, on reste entre nous.
Ouais.
Ah non, pas encore.
Je pense qu'on est entre nous, mais que les gens qui restent, en fait, ils sont plus là.
Pas là.
Ils sont pas là.
Il y a Mireille.
Alors.
Ok.
Je mets les gens en salle d'attente.
Ok.
Yes.
On est entre nous.
Ah. Ouais. Thank you, Anna.
That was very nice, Hannah.
Yeah.
Your real storytelling.
Good.
It was very pleasant.
Maybe a question, Hannah. Do you have like companies to tell their own story, you know, like to collect the story of their companies too? So that is another.
Absolutely. And one of the great things, you know, if you really want to know what's going on in a company, is to get in there and start listening to the stories about what's really happening. Because normally if you say